Hello everyone, and Total War Warhammer as a series is about 10 years old now. It's got a ton of playable characters, and many of them are incredibly unique, even when you've got very similar lords right next to them. The problem is that there's a lot of characters in-game which just don't have anything too unique about them, meaning that the replayability for that faction is kind of lost. This stems from Warhammer 1 being more closer to a traditional Total War, even though vastly different, but then everything kind of changed up in Warhammer 2 around the midway point where legendary lords were being introduced with loads and loads of unique mechanics, and this was allowing for the faction and character diversity that many people wanted, and it's thankfully been pushing onto Warhammer 3 with a few small step backs, as there are some base game legendary lords that don't really have a lot going for them. Now, I'm not saying that every legendary lord needs a massive mechanic to be different from any other lords in that specific race. Kugath is a perfect example here. He doesn't have anything completely unique. All he has is the super plagues that are available from the normal plague mechanic, but it fits incredibly well with his gameplay and his lore, so Kugath feels a lot better than he did from the original point of Nurgle. And while you do have some other unique mechanics with Epidemius or Tamukon, there's still a reason to play as the big man. Then there's also stuff like the Chaos Dwarfs. I know some people would argue against this, but I feel like the Chaos Dwarfs don't need unique mechanics in between them because there's so much going on with the Chaos Dwarfs that they don't need any extra things. There's literally a fun campaign to be had with all of them. Sure, some people would say new mechanics come in and make them a little bit more interesting. I've been able to sit down and play with all three of them and not felt like it was playing the same thing over and over. The same thing would go with the Warriors of Chaos, and that's because there's so many different things that you could do there, because they've got access to, 5 different rosters, and some of them are god-touched or have some specific stuff about them, or things like Be'lakor incentivized to have a few more demons. Sure, there could be a few minor changes there to make it a little bit better, but since Creative Assembly are going to be looking at Archaon, there's a chance that they'll be maybe giving them a quick pass. Let's hope. But it's not a deal breaker if they don't really get too much. Now, I want to emphasize here, it's not about the character itself, but more so their faction. Because the faction itself is the full gameplay. If a character has dedicated mechanics, like say for example, Kairos, but the faction doesn't really have anything, then it's still pretty vanilla. Which I think is something that Creative Assembly kind of got lost with there. It's important that factions have the diversity over the character in some regard, because that way you can sit down and go, okay, there's a difference here. This is why the Empire does so well. While Karl Franz has the best campaign out of all of them alongside Balthasar Gelt, you're still kind of incentivized to play Volkmar or the Hans Marshal. The High Elves have also recently done that with Tides of Torment, and it feels great. Every lord has something different. Sure, some are better than others, but it's a very big strength there. So if we look at the playable races list, we can remove some that either all the lords have something unique or are in a pretty good state just by themselves, right? So that would be the Chaos Dwarfs, the Demons of Chaos, the Empire, the High Elves, Nolska, even though I'd argue that Wulfric still doesn't have enough, Nurgle, the Ogre Kingdoms, Slaanesh, because, yeah, Tides of Torment did a lot. Yeah, I'm not too keen on Nakari's mechanic. It's very situational, but it still works as intended. And the Warriors of Chaos. So it's a pretty good even spread, I'd say. The Tomb Kings, I still think need a little bit more. Here's hoping that they'll get something during either the Lords of the End Times, or in a future character pack DLC if character packs have reworks or not even full-blown reworks, just small updates. I do feel like each of the lords deserve something unique. Now, with this list that we have, the ones that aren't just scratched off, I feel like there is still a decent amount of lords that have something unique there. This very much depends on the race. The majority of them will have something unique. So, for example, the Dark Elves, most of them have something very unique about them, barring Malekith and, to a certain degree, Morathi. Whereas the Beastmen, for example, yeah, they're lacking quite a bit. So we're going to go through the individual races and talk about which ones need something a little bit more just to really bring the race all together. And in some cases, what doesn't need to be done for individual lords, just the whole race in general. There are 4 legendary lords for the Beastmen, but 3 of which, the first wave of Beastmen, are pretty much identical. Khazrak, One Eye, Malagor the Dark Omen, and then finally Morgur the Shadowgave. There's nothing too big about these characters in regards to just playability. If you want something unique, you'd play Torox the Brass Bull, because you'd get some rampage mechanics that only really fit on that character, but still, there are benefits for the whole faction, which means that you get a lot more from it. Khazrak, Malagor, and Morgur need to be fixed up. I don't know what they'll do for Khazrak, mostly because it looks like they kind of molded him up with Gore for the Beast Lord. Malagor definitely needs some whole corruption style base mechanic, and Morgur, honestly, something as simple as giving him access to all the different God-touched Chaos Spawn. This is the Spawn Lord, and he doesn't have anything. And we're still missing the gigantic Chaos Spawn too, which is really disappointing. Overall, I would be happy if the Beastmen just got another once over. So they don't need a rework, but if they got something in the lines of what the Tomb Kings got, that would be a lot better. It's just, there's a few issues with the Beastmen altogether. When it comes to Bretonnia, there's 4 legendary lords once again, with Rapunzel the Leoness being the only one with her own unique mechanic in a sense. The issue here is, I don't think they're going to invest too much time in Bretonnia unless they do a DLC pack, but the problem is that, yeah, it was a free race, so they're not really making any money from this. The big issue here is Bretonnia needs another rework, the 3rd and final. Well, I think 4th, actually. I don't know at this point. It's been a lot of updates to Bretonnia, and they've never really hit the mark. In some cases, actually made things worse. But it's odd that there is no control for Leon Leoncoeur. Again, Morgana Le Fay could have, like, the Kislev mechanic for Hogwarts, you know, making up your spellcasters and stuff. And, well, I mean, they've done something new with Alberic, which is, you know, making him look a little bit different, but that's it. There's no... Yeah, there's nothing. It's kind of odd. It is pretty odd. They moved into Lustria, and his mechanics are now kind of screwed because some of your faction benefits are based on Bretonnian knights, but fighting with knights on the Lustrian maps is not really ideal. So yeah, Bretonnia needs a dedicated patch overall, and it's a shame because Creative Assembly keep acknowledging the fact that they need it, and then they do nothing about it. They're less incentivized, and it makes sense, but they really need to give this a fix through. Dark Elves have 6 legendary lords, and I'd argue that one of them really needs help, whereas 2 others could do a bit of a facelift. So the one that really needs help is, of course, Malekith, the Witch King and the faction leader. He plays like a vanilla lord. Everyone else has something unique about them. It's always really odd when a faction leader, like a king, an emperor, or whatever, has nothing. Thankfully, that's not been the case for the majority of the factions, though there are still a few faction leaders which feel kind of meh. So hopefully that could be done soon. The same thing with, in a much lesser degree, to Morathi and Lokir. Morathi, I don't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it like a Slaanesh minor faction, but there's no proper skill points for it, barring Morathi's own ones, which will affect faction-wide, but there's no tech kind of progressing for that. It's very, very odd. I feel like it's a very minor fix here, allowing for some sorceresses to have access to the lore of Slaanesh, which we're heading to the end times. It makes sense for some factions to have access to chaos laws. And just a proper once-over with some actual deep thoughts about what could be done differently here. Maybe give access to a few more demons and the rest. Lokir, I like Lokir. He's awesome, but... you know, like the Black Ark Corsair reduction should have gone faction-wide. He should have also been a unique pseudo-lord, a hybrid there, but it doesn't work that way because it's in the ocean as a unique Black Ark. You know what I mean? It's just very odd. I don't know what can be done really with Lokir, but they really need to just kind of elevate him. The rest of the lords, the 3 others, fantastic. Sure, Hellebron isn't amazing, but... it's the uniqueness which allows you to have a reason to play certain characters and just go for a different experience. Alright, dwarfs. 4 legendary lords. 3 of them are quite unique, even though some can say not too much. But we've got 3 characters that need a little bit of help. Some more than others. For example, Belagar needs a proper mechanic in regards to 8 peaks, a proper structure there. That wasn't touched upon, and the dwarves have had so many reworks at this point, it's kind of silly. They do feel a lot better, and I think that's a big reason why a lot of people don't talk about the dwarves now, but Belagar still feels incredibly vanilla, still feels like a Warhammer 1 faction. Ungrim Iron Fist, he's cooler in general, but I feel like the Slayer upkeep reduction should have gone overall faction wide, allow to focus fully on Slayers, go full Slayer keep. So not a full on mechanic, but allowing, just in general, the Slayers to be the main theme of Karak Kadrin, the Slayer hold. Thorgrim suffers with just being there. He gets access to an extra hiking decree, which means that, well, he actually gets a few of them through skill points too, but that means that you can work on the deeps a lot more, which is great. But it would have been nice if he could have actually had a bit more politicking, kind of pushing the other factions, influencing the other dwarf factions to just go for certain areas. The idea there would be, the hiking now has commanded the return of this hold. All of them will start to do that. All of them will start moving that way, or specific factions there too. Something a little small, but the idea here is being the High King. It's very weird being a High King and not having anything to kind of exert your influence over. Grand Cafe, 3 legendary lords so far, another one coming as we are aware, but the 2 base game lords are just kind of boring, I'm not going to lie. 2 of the dragons, Miao Yin and Zhao Ming, both of them share the same mechanic, which is really stupid because Miao Yin should have the Defense of the Great Bastion mechanic purely for herself, and even then it should be updated to be a bit more stylized rather than a nuisance, and Zhao Ming should have something focusing around the ogres. They've pushed that, and it's like, oh yeah, you get reduction for getting ogre units in your armies, not just the mercenaries, but the ogres will just constantly raid you. So it just feels like incredibly half-baked measures there. Here's hoping that Bashiva and the adjoining patch, if there is one, will fix that up. It's something that desperately needs to be done. There needs to be a push to separate those 2 siblings and make them quite unique. It's a shame that it hasn't been done yet, especially with all the attention that Cafe has been getting and is going to get very clearly. I love Cafe, I love them on the tabletop too, so it's a massive shame that in Total War they don't have too much to make them really as much as they've been hyping them up to be. Those 2 lords specifically, Yuan Bo is perfectly fine. Greenskins, so we have 6 legendary lords, 3 of them are fine, I mean, Gorbad isn't great, but I think that's just how Gorbad is. And then we've got 3 of them which aren't awesome, right? Like Grimgor, Azag, and Skarsnik, all of them need something kind of unique. Skarsnik needs something to focus around the whole 8 peaks mechanic, and I've called for and I've asked for a patch constantly. We need an 8 peaks focus mechanic just so all 3 lords have a proper race. Azag, I really don't think should have been a legendary lord at this point, because obviously they had plans for Nagash from the very beginning. So why bring in the character with the crown of Nagash, There's not too much that they can do with him, I think, and even I can't really think of too much for him. But Grimgor, he needs a mechanic just to focus around warfare, right? Something similar to that of, say, Arbal, but without the teleport, of course, to focus around fighting different factions. He's the biggest and the baddest Black Orc there is. Why is there no push to make him a little bit more interesting? Especially since we do have a decent amount of Black Orc units, not all of them, and we don't have a Black Orc Lord just yet, but you know what I mean. Start bringing in that push to make Grimgor the killiest. I think it's important to look at Wurzag. Whilst the Savage Orc roster is by no means complete, he's got specific Savage Orc buildings, all these special buildings littered across the Badlands and the Southlands, and you've got a massive upkeep reduction for Savage Orcs faction-wide, right? All the Savage Orcs feel great, and you've got the incentive to do full-on Savage Orc armies. I'd love if we got the missing variants and maybe some Lord and Hero options alongside the Big Stabber. Who knows if that's something that they've got in the minds for in the future through future patches or character packs, but we're not really getting free units anymore. But Wurzag plays amazingly now. He is my favorite Greenskin playthrough. I would love to see a push for at least Skarsnik and Grimgor, even if that means that Azag kind of gets screwed over. Khorne was in a very good spot, but Skarbrand has nothing. Omens of Destruction fixed a lot of issues with Khorne, but nothing and no attention whatsoever was given to Skarbrand, it feels. And it's annoying because he's Skarbrand. At this point, he could do with a mechanic that is just for him, right? Something like, for example, the Rampage mechanic. I know it's reusing a mechanic, but it makes a lot of sense for Skarbrand. Tailor it a little bit differently to affect just him and Exalted Bloodthirsters, and there you go. Skulltaker's fine post-nerf, and Arbal, I mean, I'm not too keen on because I just don't like the fact that teleport mechanics are appearing everywhere, but I feel like Skarbrand, with how big he is in lore, makes no sense that he's got nothing. Maybe in the end times they'll do a little Passover for him, but I don't know, it just feels really odd here, right? Especially since he popped up in so many memes from Creative Assembly directly. Like, you'd think that they'd go, yeah, no, he needs something. He's been a marketing tool for a while. Kislev's in a weird spot. I don't think they're going to get anything else. I just find Boris as a weird lord, right? He takes part in the race between Katerin and Kostaltin by being an influence there, but it just feels super weird. He should have had a mechanic to hunt down other Chaos factions. And his campaign is geared to being inside the Chaos Waste, so it just feels odd. I don't think anything's going to change for Kislev in the future, but maybe a once-over for him would be great. That being said, I don't want to be negative here. The Kislev is in a very good playable state since their big rework, and they are very enjoyable to play. The Lizardmen have 7 legendary lords, which is absolutely amazing, and I'd say that 3 of them are in a pretty poor state. Well, maybe 4. Yeah, we'll go with 4. Mazdamundi, Kroq-Gar, Tic-Tac-Toe, and of course our big lad Gorok. They don't have anything unique compared to all the others. I mean, Gorok technically does because he starts off with Lord Kroak and, yeah, I mean, the barrier, but it's not really a mechanic. You'd think that they'd be looking at this. Now, the thing is that the Lizardmen still aren't in a great spot, so I don't think that they need faction mechanics just yet. I feel like they need to fix up and finalize the Lizardmen. There was a big patch recently which did a little update to the Tomb Kings and the Lizardmen, and I still stand by it should have just been for the Tomb Kings, finish it all up, and then do another patch for the Lizardmen, because, you know, there's still no fix to the geomantic web. There's still stuff that is kind of flawed. This is the problem when you take 2 separate projects, right? So 2 different reworks and put them into one patch. It sucks. Because it was a small patch, there was nothing really that could be done there. I still stand by the fact that Tic-Tac-Toe shouldn't have been a legendary lord, but hey, you know, we're here and we're kind of stuck with it. But there's loads of things that could be done for all the lords just to give them something a little bit more uniqueness, just a little bit more flavor altogether. Skaven have 6 legendary lords and likely a 7th at some point because, I mean, Thankwall, but 3 of them not great. Queek, Skrolk, and Tretch. So Queek, again, like I said about Belagar and Scarsnake, a dedicated patch for 8 peaks would be great. Maybe a little bit more emphasis about getting loads and loads of clan rats, because that's how clan wars used to fight. Skrolk, simple enough. Plagues, please. I keep asking for it, and nothing really happens. I know I'm not the only person asking for it, but like it's the Plague faction, right? The benefit of the major clans is that they're all incredibly unique with their own flavor, right? This is why Ikit, Snickich, and Throt have such fun campaigns. They could bring the most fun. It's really painful to me as a former Pestilence player for 8th edition, well, actually since 6th edition. I used to like theme my armies around Pestilence. There's nothing unique there. They have plagues, technically, but they have no control over those plagues. Literally just the Nurgle mechanics with some art changes, and you're good to go. Then when it comes to Tretch, it's such a weird thing, because Tretch's faction is actually based on Tretch, not his faction, right? There's a few updates there for, like, obviously, Storm Vermin and stuff, but it would be nice if there was, like, a little bit more there, right? I'll be honest with you, I don't really care about Clan Rictus, but it would be nice if something was done just to kind of push that up. That whole ambush success chance, Vanguard deployment, menace below, and enemy reinforcement time, that's all to do with Tretch rather than the clan itself. So it would be nice just to see a little bit more towards the Storm Vermin. Tomb Kings got the better half of the update alongside the Lizardmen, but I would argue that it would be nice to see some actual changes coming in. You know, Cetra having more control, over all the other Tomb Kings. Maybe something for Katep, even though I think he should still be a legendary hero rather than a lord. You know, trying to find some artifacts of power. Khalida having some hunting vampire mechanics. And Arkan, well, I'm really hoping that Arkan gets something during the Lords of the End Times. He is Nagash's biggest simp, so it would be nice to see something updated. They play very well as they stand right now. Don't get me wrong, well, mostly Cetra. I've not really seen a reason to go to the other lords, but I do feel like it would be nice to get these four, getting something just to kind of elevate them a bit. Arkan does have access to some vampire counts, which is awesome, but he doesn't really have access to a lot. And it feels like it's more an addition rather than a hybrid faction, where he should have always been a hybrid. I'll still argue that Kairos needs something. I did a video about this recently, and it feels very vanilla. Who knows if we get other Zintian lords at this point, because it feels like Creative Assembly are actively avoiding the conversation. But yeah, something needs to be done about Kairos. His mechanic is great, it's awesome, but it affects only him, and it feels like the faction kind of suffers for it. You're not putting more incentive onto anything else. Same thing can kind of be said about the Vampire Coast. This is a faction which, you know, was awesome in Warhammer 2, but kind of suffered for Warhammer 3. They haven't really had any updates in a while. And it's very noticeable. Actually, Creative Assembly recently posted a video, a Let's Play on Lufa Harkin. I don't know if that means that they're going to get something during the Lords of the End Times, or it's just because he's going to be part of the End Time stuff, because he is a Mortarch. But like this race has suffered. They've got some like minor mechanics in that, you know, like obviously Harkin does have like the state of mind. You've got the Grand Declarations of War with Noctilus, and obviously Solistra has those knights, but it's not to Warhammer 3 standards. So it would be nice just to see a little bit of a push to make them a little bit more unique. Vampire counts have 5 lords so far, and 4 of them don't feel unique. Technically 3, because Vlad and Isabella share the same spot. If you play as one, then the other is a legendary hero. Look, it's an odd thing. Vampire counts obviously need a rework, and they've said that that's going to happen at some point. So waiting might be an option here. But like the big thing is, you know, having a little bit push towards like Vlad having like Empire mechanics, something for Heinrich, something for Krell, and obviously Gorst. I don't know what they could do for Gorst. Like, he is a footnote of a character. The fact that he exists still baffles me. He would have been great as a legendary hero. I don't think that they will change that though, which is a bit of an odd thing. But, I mean, Manfred has something unique. It's not, like, truly unique because it's just copied from someone else. I don't want to say too much about the vampires because maybe the rework is just as good as, say, the Chaos Dwarf stuff, and then it's not really needed. But still, Vlad needs to have an Empire mechanic. He really needs it. What else have 4 legendary lords? And I think what needs to be done here isn't, like, changing them up. 2 of them are very, very similar, right? Durfu and Orion. I think what needs to be done is a passover through the race. Update them more like what happened with the Tomb Kings, and maybe they'll be okay. Because right now, they're kind of boring. And it's very, very noticeable. So that's really all I can say about that. But yeah, that being said, it's about maybe less than half of the lords that feel a little bit vanilla. And there's still time. I don't think that they're going to kill off Warhammer 3 anytime soon. At least I'd like to think it that way, right? I love this game, so I'm not complaining because just for the sake of complaining. I just want to see everything brought up to a standard that's expected from Warhammer 3, especially as like this is one of the greatest games in the Warhammer circuit right now. It's so good. It's the reason why I have close to 5,000 hours, and I will likely get another 5,000 hours in many years to come. So yeah, I just want to see some of these lords which have kind of struggled or have not been great, just brought up to a new standard. But let me know what you guys think. Which lords would you think could be improved and how? And let's start a bit of a discussion. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. This video is likely going to come late because I've had to deal with a few things. I've got a really cool kit bash thing happening on Sunday. I'm doing like a big repair job. It's going to be a really fun video. So like check that out if you want to. There's been a Beastmen video coming out today, which was supposed to be for Sunday, but then the kit bash video is taking a lot longer. I think it's going to be a very long video, but it'll be really, really fun. And I'm really proud of it. And it's going to start off like a bit of a series. But yeah, have a great one, guys. See you soon. Bye.